Hi, Julie Powell here. Today I'm going to take you for a bit of a run through on how to use the brush tool in Photoshop. Now, if you've never really used Photoshop before, the brush tool can be just a little bit confusing. For those of you who've maybe used Photoshop before, maybe there's a few things here that you didn't know about the brush tool. So I've just got a blank document here. It's just white, just for something to start with, and I'm just going to get my brush tool and we're going to have a look at some of the tools that we have up here. So for instance, this is telling me that I've got the brush tool selected, and you do have other brush tools such as the mixer brush, but today we're just going to be looking at the brush tool. Then you come here to your tool panel. You've got your size, so you can change the size up or down. You can also do that with the open and close bracket keys on your keyboard. Then you've also got the hardness. Now what that refers to is how soft the brush is or how hard edged the brush is. So if I've got a brush that is pretty hard, I'm just going to select a color, make it a bit smaller. So if I've got a hard edge brush, it's just going to be really quite soft, quite sharp across the edge. But if I've got a soft brush, you can see the difference between the two, and that's just between selecting the hardness at 0 or 100%. Now down here you've got all your brushes. Now you may not have the same brushes as me because I've got quite a collection. If you don't have very many brushes loaded, you can just come here and you can load in the legacy brushes that Adobe have hidden away a bit, or you can import brushes, and you can go to lots of places and get brushes, whether you buy them or collect them for free from Brush Easy and places like that. So there's loads of brushes that you can get, and they all do different things, and some of them are more pencil brushes, some of them are more air brushes. So you can play around with things like that. Now this tool also moves things around. If you have got just a circle brush, that obviously isn't going to do much good, but if you've got something like a brush here where you may want to change the direction, let's just pick something that might make a little bit more sense. Okay, oop, stop. Okay, so these are some grass brushes which are more like a stamp type thing, but you can come in and you can change the direction, so you can paint them upside down, or you can paint them in together like that. So there's lots of things that you can do, but obviously if it's just a round circle brush, then it doesn't make much difference which direction it is going. So that's just your basics with those. Then you have got the different modes. Now usually I'm just going to leave my painting mode at normal, and if you've used Photoshop before, you will probably recognize some of these. So you can paint on with different modes. I find it a lot less confusing if I paint normally, and then if I need to, I can change the mode over here. Sometimes if I have that change to something else other than normal, I get rather bizarre things happen. So I'm just going to go whoops. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of those back in the history, and what I'm going to do now is go through some of the others. So you've got opacity and you've got flow. This really will depend on if you are using a mouse or if you have a tablet and pen or an iPad or whatever that you are using, because your opacity, if you have it set at 100% opacity, it will just paint 100% opacity. There's no transparency to it at all. If you were to swap that to say 40%, as you can see, it is quite transparent. If I paint back over it, it will eventually be 100%, same as the other layer. Now, the opacity is in regards to how transparent or how much you can see through it. The flow is about how much you are putting on at a time. So if I go flow at 100%, it looks no different. If I drop that down to say 20%, it becomes quite transparent. And you can build it up as well. The difference with this is for the opacity, you basically have to take your finger off your mouse or lift your pen. With the flow, the more you build up on it in the one spot, the stronger it becomes. So it's really good if you're doing highlighting and shading and things like that. You can build up using a lower flow. You can, of course, have them both low. So if we just get rid of some of that. So if I had both of them low, you get very, very, very subtle, and you just have to click to build up again and again and again. So that's using that. Now you also have in your brush panel, you have your shape dynamics and your scattering, and what these can do, you can turn your control. So if you're using a tablet, you can have your pen pressure on, or if you are using a mouse, you can fade your brush stroke off. So if you were to, hang on, let me just put this back up to 100% so you can see what I'm talking about. So I can paint this and you can see where it fades off, which is great if you were doing hair or something like that. Another one which is also really good is scattering. Now if I just find, I'm going to find one of the brushes that's already got some scattering in it. So for instance, this brush with the leaves, it's already got the scattering on here. It's also got the shape dynamics, which is changing color and things like that. So if you go to the color dynamics, it is playing around with all of those. So the scattering is a really cool one to be able to, and if I was to put the count up, it would be a lot more. And I can change the scatter to be even more. So if I change that, so you can play around with the shape dynamics and the scattering of both of those, and you can make some really, really fabulous items when it comes to doing something creative. This is a piece that I made, and a lot of this is painted in. So the hair was using a hair brush, so you're just stamping it in and changing the colors. The birds were using a brush. The grass all along the edge was using a brush. The backgrounds, the highlights, everything in here was done using the brush. And it's quick, it's easy, and it's loads of fun. It gives you a very, very creative element. So if I was to come back here, I'm just going to put in another layer. Oop. So if I was to change this to, say, a grass brush, and this is where you can pick up, you can go to green. If you wanted more of a sort of autumn colouring, you come into here, go into your brush panel. You could change your colour dynamics so that you're getting a different array of colours through there on your grasses, and that's a terrific way to make some grass. There are other grass brushes out there that you can play with. You don't necessarily even have to have your scattering turned on. There is sort of clump brushes that you can use that will give you grass effects, and there's bird brushes. So these are more like stamp brushes, but you can put them together to make different effects and looks on your pieces. So something like this, which was put together, I used random brushes for the background. You can see there's a grass brush on top of the hill. I used some messy sort of grungy brushes to paint in the background, and then the birds and my subject were put in, but I did paint her hair in over the top because I didn't like, I believe the original subject, she had really short hair. So that's playing with the brush in Photoshop. It's loads of fun. Do go try it, have a play with it. You can play with different effects. There's air brushes and all the rest of it. Don't forget there's loads of different brushes you can try. So you can do fan brushes, there's oil painting brushes, there's sponge brushes, there's pens, pencils, all sorts of things. And then of course you've got other brushes that you can use to stamp on your subject as well. So that's it for this little tutorial. I hope you learned something out of it, and I will see you next time.